Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Adam Cannon. I'm an e-learning evangelist here, and I'll be kind of running this webinar. Today we'll be talking about conquering character state changes in storyline. This webinar will be recorded, and a recording will be sent out as a follow-up email and then also posted on our blog tomorrow. With us we have Amber Rodbell, who's a senior developer on our custom team. Thank you for joining us, Amber. We're glad to have you with us.
Sure.
If you have questions during the webinar, we'll be ready to answer your questions in the question panel or during the webinar, so feel free to use that questions panel as you need it. I'll be monitoring that, and we'll jump in from time to time with those questions. We'll get to as many of these as we can, but if we can't get to your question, we'll do our best to continue the conversation in the webinar recap, and you're always welcome to reach out to us via email or on the blog comments and so forth. Just so you know, one of the things that we like to do after the webinar is to try to follow up as soon as possible. Sometimes it's just to get feedback. Most of the time, though, we want to touch base and find out if anyone needs some one-on-one clarification about the topics after the fact. And so, without any further ado, I'll turn the microphone over to you, Amber.
Alrighty. Well, welcome everyone. Today, as Adam said, we're going to be discussing conquering character state changes in storyline. Most of us have all received courses where they are 90% scenario based, and the first one or two slides are fun because we're making the characters interact, and then we start getting to 3, 4, 5, and it becomes a little bit tedious. So today we're going to discuss some ways that hopefully we can make it a little less tedious and have a better end product that really looks seamless and really has the best look when it's outputted from storyline. So first off today, we're going to start with a poll question. So Adam, can we put that poll question up?
Yep, here we go. So what do you find most challenging in regards to character changes in storyline? Is it managing multiple characters on the timeline, adjusting the characters when there's a voiceover update, the development speed with multiple character changes on a single screen, or making the character interactions look natural? So go ahead and vote on that, and we'll let that run here for a minute. Looks like people are answering. We'll give you a few more seconds to vote. How about 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We'll close that out. And it looks like, Amber, about 55% of those saying, you know, making the character interactions look natural. And there's another 25% or so, or just under, who's talked about the development speed. And then the other two are split between the managing multiple characters and adjusting the characters when category. So that's kind of our breakdown there.
All right, that makes sense to me because I would have said the exact same thing. For me, it's always first making everything look natural and go together well, and then of course is the development speed, because you want to be able to do it quickly yet not look repetitive like you're just using the same two states over and over and over again. So hopefully today you can get some tips on how to do this. So here we go. First off, we are going to do the poll. We're going to talk about the options that we have when using characters. First, we have putting the characters on the timeline and having character and then another character and another character and fading it in and out. And I would say about 10 years ago, this is the way I did it every single time. It's how I was taught, it was presented to me that you always kind of faded them into each other. And then we're going to discuss putting them on the timeline without fades. So character and then another character and then another character all pushed against each other. Then we're going to talk about utilizing states. And we're going to show you how it looks with states and how it looks with fades and without fades in your states. So we're going to take a look at that in the tool. Now, we also are going to go, when we're in storyline, we're going to go into making your characters look natural in a scenario. And how we can do this, I'm going to show you a little bug that Storyline has and how you can duplicate your characters and hide them, and it eliminates the bug, and all of a sudden you don't have the strange fading in and out of characters, which a lot of us always have. So let's get started. We're going to go over here to Storyline. Here we go. Now, I'm going to show you, and we're going to walk through each way, how it looks, and kind of discuss what we think about these options. So first, we have the multiple characters on the timeline, and she has 4 state changes here. And what we've done is, if we go up to the animations panel, we've faded her with a 25 second duration here, or 0.25, and so when we go to the next character, it also has that 0.25, so they're going into each other fairly seamlessly, but you still see that little change. Now, some clients really like it this way, and it's the only way they want to see it. So the built-in animation duration is 0.75. So I found by taking it down to 0.25, it looks a little bit better. Let's take a look and we'll see what you think. But in my opinion, I think this helps it out a little bit. So she goes, and you see that slight disappearance, and then here she is again. All right, so this is with your fade on the timeline. Now, uh-oh, I lost my screen. 1 second, sorry. Okay, so then we're going to show you without a fade on the timeline. So this is when you take your animations off, and as you see, you just put the characters back to back to back, but they're still on your timeline. So when you have a voiceover change, you are still going to have to be like, okay, well, they changed it, so now I'm going to be moving her over here, and you're still going to have to adjust them accordingly, which can, depending on, like, if you have a 2 or 3 minute timeline, that can still be a significant change to have to readjust all those characters, especially when there's more than one character on the screen. So let's take a quick look at how this looks with no animation and just going from pose to pose to pose. So as you can see, I personally, when I'm doing it on the timeline, I do it this way without a fade at this point because I think it looks a lot more seamless. All right, now we are going to take a look at the way I've been doing it when we don't use the timeline. So first, now we can, years past, I guess, early Storyline, you couldn't actually add animations to your states, but now you can. So if your client really likes the fade, you can actually add them to your individual states of this character and put them right there on the character states. So what I've done is I've taken our girl, and all of those states that we previously had 4 images for, I have put in their own individual state, and I named them like surprised or good job or explain. So then what I do is, and a lot of times when I have my audio in, I'll use markers here, and that way I know exactly what seconds different things on the timeline are being said. And then what I'll do is I'll change state of picture 4, which is our girl, to surprise when the timeline reaches 3 seconds, or when the timeline reaches that point in the audio. Now, what are the benefits of this? The benefits of this is that if your client decides, okay, I'm changing all the voiceover, that's okay, it's no big deal, because you just put your audio back in and you're just changing your seconds to, instead of 3 seconds, maybe it's 5 seconds now, and maybe it's 7 seconds. So it's not really as big of a deal as it was before, because you're not having to adjust 4 images on the timeline. You're only really adjusting this one. So let's take a look here at them side by side, and one is showing without fades and one is showing with fades, so you can see the difference. You see the flash with the fade. Personally, I've been trying to like get away from that, but there are those clients who still are like, you know, I like when I see that they're changing. But I think it looks nice when you can't tell they're changing and they kind of just seamlessly change based on the state change. And all you're doing for that is changing your state to the state of surprised or good job or explain when the timeline reaches a certain amount of seconds. Okay, so now it's pretty easy. We don't really have a problem when it comes to changing our states when there's one character because they're not really interacting with each other, so it's no big deal. You just have to change their pose, basically. But when we had in another character on the screen, we then are manipulating two people, and based on voiceovers, we're changing what they're saying, how they're looking at each other, and you know, this is when states, I think, become extremely helpful because you can then choose your custom image, and these are all from our cutout library. And we can say, okay, we know that our storyboard says that she's asking him a question and he asks a question back and then he's listening and then he answers her. And so what I do is I'll start my putting in my states and I'll name them accordingly, according to how the conversation goes. So I already know, okay, when I hear that point in the audio, I'm going to trigger a state that says question, or I'm going to trigger the state that says I'm listening. And so I do that for both characters. And so we have happy and we're listening. And then I also add a begin state. And I will show you why I add that here in a second. So first off, I'm going to show you this screen really quick. And I want you to try to look at it very closely and see what, if you can point anything out in the first state change. All right, so let's see if I can ask the group a question. Did anybody notice anything, and I'll play it again, in this first state change? Do you notice anything that you don't notice in the subsequent state changes? Can we have them answer a question for us, Adam?
Yeah, so go ahead and answer in the questions panel. So we're getting a few responses. We're seeing Christopher says the body moved. Alicia says the delay is longer.
Okay.
One person says I don't see anything different. Another one, no fade. All right,
so let's watch it again. Look really closely right now. So you'll notice that for whatever reason, and
so there's a few more responses. The little boy leaned forward, or his facial expression changed, or the arms. So those are some of the responses we've got coming in.
Okay, good job. So what you'll see is that right now, the lady on the screen, you can really see it with her, you can really see the change of the state. And I was like, why is this happening? You know, everything's the same. There's no animation on the states. There are no differences whatsoever in the two. Like there was nothing. But for whatever reason, when I have that first state change and these two are on the screen by themselves, you see it like is almost a delay in the state change. So you see the two kind of overlap for, you know, maybe it's 0.2 seconds, but it was really irritating me. I noticed it and I was like, okay, we've got to be able to get rid of that. So here's what you can do. I put over here on the side of my timeline, I copied the characters and I put them over here, okay? And I know this seems really bizarre, but by doing so, and by adding to each character, I add a begin state. And at the very beginning, in my triggers, I change the character when the timeline starts to that begin state. Then, if we preview the slide, it no longer has the overlap. And it's seamless on every state change. Now, I tried to figure out if the elimination was these characters over here or if it were perhaps just the begin state. But when I have these characters hidden, I see it, but when they're not hidden, I don't see it. So I was like, well, that's pretty bizarre. So when you move it over here then, and I put them a little bit closer, and then I put these guys on the screen, I was like, I want to see if it's still happening. And these are those things in Storyline that I just get all like wondering, you know, why is this happening and how can we prevent it from happening, and, you know, can spend hours just looking at these until I find that they're good enough or how I want them to look. So let's look at this one. Now this one, the state changes I feel are a lot better when, for whatever reason, these characters, and they don't have to be on the screen, I found when I put them off to the side, then it helps out a lot. Now, so that's all great and good, and this is how I've been doing it recently, mainly because when I go to VoiceOver, I can easily change the seconds and when they're on the timeline, and I'm not adjusting everything on the timeline here. One thing to note is that you always want to adjust the amount of time your characters are on your timeline to the same amount as your audio. And that's probably pretty obvious, but just so you know. Now, I do a lot of these if I want a certain, you know, label to my character, I will go ahead and label them myself. But we have already done a lot of these for you at eLearning Brothers, and here is, and you can download this cutout person, and she already has her states built in for you. So you'll see she already has her casual, clapping, communicating, confused, excited, and what you might have to do is rename some of your states because maybe you want to make it more obvious to you, but I think they have really good names, and so it makes it fairly easy to identify them. So what you can do is, I'm going to show you here because you can go to our website and go to your cutout people, and then you are going to go down to your storyline characters, and you'll see all of these packs, and what they really are is a storyline template file, and when you download it, you'll open it up and your character will already have those built-in states for you, so that then you can just control this character on your timeline and have it changing as your timeline goes and as your voiceover goes, and it really will eliminate a lot of legwork for you when you're not having to build those states in yourself and when you're not having to adjust those on the timeline. So that is really what we've done to conquer state changes here. So if you want to discuss that any more with our team, please feel free.
So Amber, there's a couple questions that have come in. So first of all, we'll jump in. Nancy wonders, is there a reason you change states using seconds rather than cue points?
I have used cue points and I've used seconds. here's what I've found, is that if I'm using a cue point, then I guess I have to change it on the timeline still. And for me, I don't mind doing that. I just personally like seconds, because usually when I'm listening to the audio, I'm watching the seconds and I'm writing down, as I listen to it, I write down the seconds. And so I already know the seconds because I've written it down. They really will work exactly the same. It's just a personal preference.
Okay. And then another question is, we notice you're doing this in Storyline too. Do these principles apply to the newer versions as well, 3 and 360?
They do. I actually originally did this entire thing in 360, but then I had to switch computers, so I had to redo everything in 2. So, because this computer only has 2 on it, my other one has 360. So that's the only reason. But yes, it works great in 360.
And then there's another question that maybe it's just asking for a review. It just says, what exactly is being done differently? So maybe if you go back to the slide where you had the boy and the girl talking, and just sort of review again what you were going over there as far as what's done differently, that might be good to review that.
So this was kind of a process. So to show what was kind of done differently is somewhat difficult, because you didn't see me like 3 steps before this, where we got here. So, okay, so originally I had the girl and the boy. They were here speaking. And I did not have a beginning state, okay? Let me get this out of my way. Okay, so I did not have a beginning state. In doing so, by not having a beginning state, the first state was the normal state, and it was basically going from normal to question. And for whatever reason, I found that the first state change is the one where you see the strange little flicker. So if as soon as the timeline started, I already changed the state, then really the next state becomes the second state change, and the flicker goes away. Now, everything was working great and everything was wonderful, and then because I had originally put 4 characters on the screen so you could see the differences of the 2. But then, when I deleted 2 of the characters, all of a sudden my flicker was back. But when I put them back on the screen, then my flicker stays away. So I know that's very strange, very confusing, but if you create a state change that says begin, and you trigger it at the very beginning of your slide when your timeline starts here, make it go to your begin state, then it eliminates having a flicker when you're going to your second state change. So hopefully that makes sense.
Good. That does. Does it also? So there's a question about, does that also happen if you just have the initial state hidden, and then as your timeline starts, you change that state to normal, or do you actually have to create that separate begin state for it to work?
I tried that too, and it still happened at hidden. And I guess because when you go from hidden, you go then to normal, and then you go to your next one, which was question. So you're really still just going to that first state, because hidden, when you're unhiding it, it goes automatically to normal. So you still have a state change to get to question. So no, I tried that, and it did not work the same. So I couldn't just hide it. So just make an extra state. I just duplicated the normal one and called it begin.
Okay, so yeah, so that answers this question of basically the begin state is just duplicate of the normal state and renamed.
Exactly, absolutely. That's exactly right.
Then but you still trigger the start on the begin state rather than actually having it be the initial state be the begin state, right?
Exactly, exactly. I actually made it change right when the timeline starts, change it so that it already has changed to the begin state, because you don't notice a flicker when your slide is loading. Whereas when it's 4 seconds in, it's more noticeable because you're really intent on it. because I'm sure it's still flickering right when you turn your slide on, but because it's all fading in, you don't notice it.
Okay, and then one more question. Does having the slide transitions, where you've got the kind of the animation on the slide, does that change anything as far as this flicker, or anything that we need to be aware of in the character usage?
No, that didn't change anything at all. Any kind of the slide transitions, they work completely separate to anything that's actually on your timeline.
Okay. All right. That's all the questions that have come across. Well, hang on. So, sorry, one more question just came in. I'm still not understanding the characters appearing to the side of the slide. Are they required?
So I know. Okay. So, well, let's say this. In 360, they are not required. So if you're using 360 and you don't have the ones to the side, it works perfect. But when using Storyline 2, all of a sudden, it was like it just wouldn't, unless you had those two to the side, it wouldn't work anymore. So I have to say that in Storyline 2, a duplication of them is required. In 360, it is not.
So it's just kind of a glitch in the system, so to speak.
Exactly.
Or a feature.
Yeah.
What about Storyline 3? Does it function the same way as 360?
It does, yes.
Okay. All right. So that's kind of the end of the questions. We will. So go ahead and finish out, and if you're done, then we'll take over from here.
Yeah, I'm done, and that's if anybody has any questions regarding state changes or the character states in our website, they can send in a question or give us a call.
There's actually one question, and maybe you can demonstrate this really quickly.
Sure.
There's a question on how to upload the character packs into Storyline, and they asked specifically about Storyline 3, but I think it's the same across the board. You talked about it being a template. Can you just show how to get it from our website then into Storyline?
Absolutely. So here are the characters on the website, all the different ones. And all you're going to do is, if you'll notice here, you're going to download the Storyline template file. You just click that, and it will download for you. And then you can just click on it, and it'll open up in your Storyline program. And all you have to do then is copy the character into whatever file you're using. And it'll open up here in a second. There we go. So here it is. And so you'll see we have Kate Industrial, and they also give you a cropped version, which is really nice if you don't want her full body. So, and it's also really nice because sometimes you have to be make sure you're looking closely, because sometimes the characters, and I'll show you here, if you take her and you resize her, every now and then some of your states don't automatically resize, or they'll resize wonky. But usually everything works. The only thing, I had it with like one of them, and I think it's just when it's like something like this, because her whole kind of body changed so much that you just need to resize it just a little bit. But see, she's already right here in the file, and you can then just hit copy, and you can carry her over to any file, and and all her states will stay with her.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So Thank you, Amber, for that information. I know it's very useful. I've been using Storyline for years myself, and I still find information in these things. And so hopefully it all made sense to all of you, and you didn't miss anything. There are a few questions about do you have to be a paid member to get the characters, and the answer is generally yes. You need to have a subscription. There are a few of the free characters in our free library. And you do need to import when you're importing the character pack, you do need to get the whole Storyline template to get all the states. But you can also create your own, as Amber showed. In case you missed something, or in case you need some help, feel free to please call us, and we can walk you through any part of this as we go. Amber's got the number on the screen right there. There'll most likely be a lot of people calling or setting up appointments, so please reach out as soon as possible. Obviously, with the holidays coming up, you may need to wait until after Thanksgiving next time, but we do want to set aside some time for you. You can reach eLearning Brothers at our website or email or call in directly, and we'd be happy to speak with you. If you need some one-on-one time, we have that option as well, where you can set up a time to speak to somebody like Amber or myself or somebody else to go through your projects and your needs. We will be sending out an email to all of you in the next few hours that will include the recording of this webinar, some of the links to some free stuff, as well as a few other things, and then links to us. So be looking for that email. And then in addition, the webinar recap will, with the recording, will be posted to our blog tomorrow, probably tomorrow afternoon. So that being said, thank you, Amber, for this great webinar, and everyone else, thank you for joining us.